Hey, thanks for checking out my channel. I'm Tom Neiman, and this is Paint and Draw with Tom. Well, today we're going to focus in on a topic that I haven't covered yet on the channel, and that's the use of reference books for the purposes, in this case, of portrait painting or portrait drawing. And I have a really great resource that I stumbled upon recently, which is actually called Facial Expressions, a visual reference for artists by Mark Simon, who's a professional artist and author. And I stumbled upon this a while back when I was in a discount bookstore. And in addition to that, I discovered it, I guess, when I was going through a little bit of a spring cleaning process here in the studio. And with that said, I'll show you around a little bit before we jump into the book review. This will be a quick one, but when we look at my studio, it's still not where I ultimately envision it to be, but I had a really big challenge with clutter. I had a lot of finished and unfinished paintings that were unframed. And so recently I've started doing a lot of framing. I got rid of a lot of the clutter, and we have a bunch of paintings that are ready, they're completed. And in addition to that, we have some of my plein air paintings, kind of a little bit of a library of plein air paintings. They're hung. They serve as a really great reference. While we're on the theme of reference, here's a painting that I'm currently working on. This was a plein air start at Quiet Valley Living Historical Farm, and I'll finish it up on site once we get some dry weather. It's a pastel painting, so really difficult to work in the rainy conditions that we have right now in pastel. But in any event, we'll jump back into the topic at hand, and that is this wonderful book. I'm going to walk us through it within 10 minutes. And I'm going to describe some of the ways with which it's been helpful resource for me. Okay, so we have this wonderful book, Facial Expressions, a visual reference for artists by Mark Simon. This is a nice complement to other resources that I've highlighted on the channel. Some of the books that have really helped me accelerate my learning as an artist who draws and paints. That includes other books like Drawing the Head and Hands by Andrew Loomis, and in addition to that, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards. This is a nice complement. So once you get some momentum going with your portrait work, sometimes you'll maybe venture out beyond doing a portrait from reference, and maybe you'll want to bring a little bit more creativity to the effort to make portraits, whether it be drawing in pencil, pen, like I have within this little journal here. There may be things that you want to, elements of creativity that you want to bring into it, whether it be altering the facial expression or maybe adding elements to a particular scene that involves portraiture that just don't exist in reference, whether you're painting or drawing from life or from reference photos. So when you are missing, sometimes when you do that, you're missing information, basically the bridge between where a current image is to where you'd like to take it. And a reference book like the one that we're going to spotlight today with Facial Expressions can help you bridge that gap. And here's how. So when you look at this book, it's all about facial expressions. And in this case, the author does a remarkably good job of organizing this in a useful way. This is a relatively recent publication, even though we're in 2025 right now at the time of this recording. It was published in 2005, which is still recent in my view. Some of my kids and their friends would probably look at that as ancient history. But it's very simply designed, easy to digest. The author has a ton of credentials as an artist and an illustrator, great education background. And when you look at the table of contents, you can see it's chock full of helpful information, as any reference guide should be, and it's organized in a way that makes it really easy to use. It starts with an introduction, how to use the book, a skull gallery, which is really important when you're doing portraiture to understand at least some of the basics about human anatomy. And then there's the expressions gallery, which is organized by age bands, 20 to 27, 31 to 39, 40 to 47, and so on and so forth, all the way up to ages 83. And the reason there is because there are just some general trends that you see amongst human faces as we age. Wrinkles form, skin tends to loosen up, and other things that affect facial expression. So this is a great way of making sure that you bring those concepts to your work, and it gives you an opportunity to bridge the gap between what it is you're seeing in your reference versus what it is you'd like to express in your portrait work across all those ages. And then there's a sequential expressions gallery, which actually shows how facial expressions evolve, maybe from a resting face. There's a kissing gallery, which is kind of neat. You get to see, two faces, and how they interact, and the facial expressions that come along with couples while they're kissing. There's a phonemes gallery, which is really, really interesting, and I'll spend a little time there. And then hats and headgear gallery. And I was just teaching a class this past weekend, and one of the students, expressed their frustration with trying to render the human head in a baseball cap. So there's some truth behind how difficult that is. There's some elements of foreshortening and other things that come into play that make that sort of task really difficult. But having a reference like this at your disposal can certainly help. There's some contact information and an indice that's really, really helpful. So it's pretty straightforward. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but the artist kind of spends some time, and the author spends some time, talking about their experience and their credentials, and then has some suggestions about, how to use the reference. Here we have the skull gallery, and you can see there's a beautiful black and white image, grayscale image of a human skull. We go into some of the mechanics of how the skull is structured and how it works, the movement of the jaw, and so on and so forth, and things to look for when you're trying to create a human head as part of your portraiture, or render a skull even too, and that's quite fun. And here you have a little bit of an anatomy lesson talking about the different pieces, the structure of the human skull, and reference photos showing it from just about every angle. Here you have reference photos showing the human skull layered with muscle. So in this case, it's not a skull that's fully decomposed. You have some musculature. I believe it's done with modeling clay, or perhaps maybe some other sort of material, but it actually does a really good job of spelling out how the musculature around the skull and the face are structured, which is really, really helpful and a really, really important knowledge set to have some understanding of when you're trying to engage in portraiture. And then we jump into the expressions gallery, and you can see all the human emotions, or most of them, from pleased to happy, giggling, ecstatic, hysterical, tender, blissful, so on and so forth, stone-faced, hungover, all kinds of things. And then you have organized by age group. Here's a young adult, age 20. And they work through the different expressions that you might look for. So you get a sense for how this works. You can leap all the way through and go up to somebody age 21. You can see some examples of some illustrations and renderings that were inspired by these photos, which is wonderful. And what's really good too is there's a lot of variety in facial structures and body types as we make our way through the ages. We're at age 23. Still on age 23. I guess there were some limitations when creating this book, and as far as the space that these reference photos had, to before you fill up a book, before it becomes too unwieldy, but also probably the availability of models as well. But the author and the publisher do a really good job here of bringing together what I think is a really useful source. You also see what's really nice, kind of an added bonus. You see some really clever illustrations as well at the end of each section of the photo gallery here, which is always helpful. It's always helpful. Maybe you learn a little tip or an insight or are reminded of something with regards to, you know, how you can go about accomplishing some of the effects that these artists are bringing into the process when they're inspired by some of these facial expressions shown throughout the galleries. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit in the interest of time. You can see there's a lot of reference material here. So much so I can guarantee you would never use all of it. But once again, when you're in a situation where you want to bridge that gap between the available model that you have and maybe something that you're trying to bring into the scene or the rendering of a portrait of a particular model that's not available to you, this sort of reference can be extraordinarily helpful. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip ahead to some of the other major sections here, and then we'll wrap up. You have the kissing gallery, and you can see this is really important because when you get into the interaction between couples that are kissing, you have a lot of dynamism, shapes to the face that just don't normally occur when somebody's expressing emotions. And then in addition to that, you have the normal shadows that are part of the human face when you're trying to render it, and then you have the potential for cast shadows from the partner kind of coming into the picture. And this provides some really, really helpful reference, when it comes to these sort of more intimate scenes. Then you have the phonemes gallery, and this is really, very helpful. So as you're embarking on the effort to complete a portrait, there may be times where an important aspect of the personality of the subject or an important aspect of the scene that you're looking to render might involve drawing or painting somebody's face when they're in mid-sentence. Perhaps maybe it's an opera singer or a teacher, and you want to do maybe a portrait of somebody who would normally be expressing themselves by singing or by talking. You're going to want to be able to have some mastery over how the face actually changes shape when people are actually talking. And here you have some examples. Obviously, it's not going to capture every element of this, but some of the more frequently used aspects of the human language, the pronunciation of vowels and consonants, and some of the poses that you normally would see, kind of classic poses, kind of a resting face versus somebody who's screaming loudly, somebody who's shushing somebody, both male and female, and young and old, to kind of give you some good examples, of how folks will see their face change. And then you get into the hats and headgear gallery. This is really helpful. There's all kinds of things that people wear for sports and for general silliness or for work, and for traditions and those sorts of things. Those are a good collection of all those here. And this could be really, really, really useful. It's from multiple angles. So somebody looking down with a baseball cap, somebody looking up, somebody perhaps maybe heading out on a canoe or a kayak trip, maybe going whitewater rafting, and they're a little concerned about what they see. Whatever the case may be, from all angles, this could be extraordinarily helpful. Bicycle helmets, police, chef, so on and so forth. And there's a ton of contact information for the models. I'm not sure how up to date these are. And then there's a great index. So there you have it. That's a quick summary of facial expressions, a visual reference for artists. I believe this is still in distribution. You can find it perhaps maybe like I did at a used bookstore, or you could probably find it on any of the online booksellers as well. But I would encourage you to check it out if you're looking to embark on portrait work. If you're somebody that gets hired for the purposes of commissioning tribute paintings and that sort of thing, could be extraordinarily helpful. If you enjoyed this walkthrough of Facial Expressions, a visual reference for artists by Mark Simon, please give me a like and subscribe, maybe share with a friend or fellow artists that you think might find this information useful. Thanks for checking out my channel. I hope you stay well, and hopefully we'll see you again next time.